friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Erin, and if this is your first time here, welcome to Booked and Busy. So today's video is going to be another book recommendations video, and I'm going to be recommending you some fantasy, romance, or romantasy books. But these are not just any fantasy romance recommendations. These are fantasy romance recommendations for the girlies that like epic high fantasy. So if you've been on my channel for any length of time, you know that I love epic fantasy. I love intense world building. I love long books. I love intricate magic systems, complex political dynamics, complex familial situations, and large casts of characters, and you know, a lot of lore, all these things. And my fantasy taste also are factors in my fantasy romance taste. So I wanted to make a video where I would recommend fantasy romance to people who also like epic fantasy, because yes, I want a steamy, fun, exciting romance, but also I want a really well-built, well-developed fantasy world and fantasy plotline. And to me, nobody asked, but the difference between fantasy romance and romantasy is that romantasy is a romance that takes place in a fantasy world, where fantasy romance is a romance plotline and a fantasy plotline. Like, it is a romance that takes place in a fantasy world, but there is both plot lines, and like the fantasy world is well developed and well built. So where one is just like a backdrop for the story, one is like this really rich world that these characters exist in, the world feels lived in, and there is enough of the plot line that has to do with the world around the characters as much to do with the romance. So let's get into it. I ordered these in, except for the last one, so I ordered these in an order of least popular to most popular, and I used their Goodreads rating. So the one at the top has the least amount of ratings, and the one at the bottom has the most, with exclusion to the absolute last book I'm going to talk about. So without any further ado, let's just get into it. So first and foremost, we have Reign and Ruin by J.D. Evans. Most of these, except with the exception of two, kind of three, are self-published, and you can find them on KU. And you will have to purchase them through like print to order on demand on like Barnes or via Amazon. So this one I found out about because it was the winner of the self-published fantasy blog off, which is a fantasy competition by Mark Lawrence, and this is like the first like fantasy romance of its kind to win this award. So in this one, we follow our main character, who is the heir to the sultanate that used to rule the world. And many years ago, there were people that were cast out in this bloody war, and since then magic has become unbalanced, and to balance the wheel they have to bring in people that represent each of the segments of this magic. And so we follow our main character, who has this light magic, and her love interest is this broody, bloody prince who was cast out because he has this darkness, this magic that's darkness. So if you like a shadow daddy, we have another one here, and we follow them as they are navigating this political landscape, because there's a new war coming where it's like science and technology are taking over the things that are happening here. And we each in this series, each book, I've read the first two, each book follows a different couple, and each person in that couple has a different element of the magic, and they all have to come together to balance out the magic. I read this one back in 2022, fall of 2022, and I really enjoyed it, and I immediately read the sequel. I plan on picking up book 3 really soon, but I really enjoyed this. So this one, I would say, if you really like a detailed magic system, and you like political intrigue and political machinations, because these are royals, if you like that in your fantasy, I would recommend this one. I think this is really fun. It's really engaging. Also, I think the physical copy is just so good. Like, here is some of like the design that's on the pages, and like every page is like that, and not just like the chapter headers. And this is just really well done, and I don't think that the romance takes anything away from the world building of the fantasy. And I would say this romance is a little bit more slow burn. It happens over the course of the book, but they are together by the course of the book, because in the sequel you'll be following a different couple. So recommend this one, and this one has about 2,000-ish ratings on Goodreads. Next up, I would recommend one of my absolute favorite fantasy romance series. This was my favorite fantasy romance for a long time. It was recently dethroned, but I still love it, and that is Blood Mercy by Villa Roth. This is the first book in a long, expansive fantasy romance series that is still ongoing. I think there are 7 books out right now, and this one is a slow burn fantasy romance, and this one also has a lot of political intrigue, and we follow our main character Cassia, who is the bastard daughter of the king, and we follow our other main character Leo, who is a Hesperine. And in this world, Hesperines are like vampires, but the vampires of this world are not like the vampires that you've heard of before. They are very kind, they're very gentle, they don't drink from people, and also they don't like kill things that they drink from. They, you know, have living sacrifices or living vessels that they get their blood from, and until they come of age they get their blood from their parents, because they drink from other vampires as well, or like they drink from their mate, so they're not just willing and dealing. But in this world, the human population is convinced that these Hesperines are so evil, and for 400 years, a treaty between the Hesperines and the human population has lapsed. And at the beginning of this novel, we see that the king of Tenebra, who is Cassia's father, initiates a call to have this summit once again so that they can recommit to these peace talks. And Cassia doesn't trust her father's motives, and she maneuvers herself so that she can follow along with the court as they move to the next location, so that she can meet a Hesperine, because she has this burning question and this desire to know something from the Hesperines. And we follow as Cassia and Leo meet, and they have this slow burn romance. And Leo, our main character, is a cinnamon roll. He's a cinnamon roll love interest, and usually I like a bad boy, but Leo is so kind, he's so intelligent, he's so sweet and so thoughtful, and I just really enjoyed the like tension in this book. It was like so slow and so sweet. This one is another one that has a lot of political intrigue. This one, it does have a fantasy plot, but this is one where there's little bits of the plot that are happening as the series goes on, and the plot gets bigger and bigger, and it's almost like an onion where you peel back the layers and you see what's really at the center of all these things. And we're following characters who are not in the midst of everything, but as the story goes on, they found out that they are the things at the center of all these things that are happening, and there are a lot of enemies and things like that. So the first book really is just about the summit and like the culmination of the events of the summit, and then it goes in like a different direction over the sequel. I really enjoyed this one. I read like the first 5 books that were out in like a week when I first read this, and I'm looking forward to revisiting the series. I know the 8th book, Blood Feast, was recently announced, and I just love these covers. Like, get into it. This is just so stunning. And this one, I want to say, has around 3,000 ratings on Goodreads. And so if you like chunky books, that whole series is pretty chunky, you like slow burn, you like a world that expands with each book and gets wider, you like vampires, you like vampire lore, that will be the one that I would recommend for you. And you also like religious elements in your books, because the religion in here also plays a large part in why certain people are oppressed, and there are these orders that have to do with like the history and the magic, and they are also moving the plot forward as well. So that would be the one that I would recommend if that's your taste when it comes to epic fantasy. Next up, we have my new favorite fantasy romance, and that is Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Rourke. This book, oh my goodness, I want to say this is the one I read second most recently, because I read one that I finished yesterday that I'm going to be recommending. This one, okay, we follow our main character Tessa, who is a fae. So this is fae. So if you like fae, here you go. This is fae, and she is coming of age. She just turned 23, and in this world, fae serve the legacy. The legacy are people who are descended from demigods, and they hold the highest place in society. So in the society, you have legacy at the top, fae in the middle, and humans at the bottom. But it really is almost like fae are at the bottom, because humans are largely ignored, whereas the fae are controlled by and in service to the legacy. And when the heirs from these 6 legacy houses come of age, which for them is age 28, they are allowed to take sources, which are people who they can pull power from, to supplement their own natural power and to keep them from tiring out. And they also have this connection with them where they have this mental, physical, emotional connection. They can see what they can be connected to them, they can hear what their thoughts are, they can heal their feelings, and they also have a level of control over this source. So it seems like being a source is just like the highest honor you can have as a fae. They also legacy have a vampiric element because they drink the blood of the fae. And like that seems like an honor, but in reality it's like the highest level of servitude because your own mind isn't your own anymore. And so this is the first time in history where all 6 families have people that are coming of age at the same time, and they're all going to choose sources. And so we open up with this event where the heirs are going to choose their sources, and there's this one heir that his family and their kingdom is kind of shunned by everyone else. They don't even know what he looks like, and he chooses our main character Tessa to be his source, and it is their story, and it is so tension filled and so angsty, and it's the will they want, the push and pull is just so, it's so rich and it's so thick, and it's like it's almost frustrating to the point because you're like, I understand completely why she doesn't want to do this. Also, this has like really big mental health rep. It deals with depression, it deals with anxiety, it deals with like suicidal ideation, all that. And this is just so good. Like the magic in here, I read the second book now, and like this is one where you think you know what's going on, but there's even more. So there are gods in this world, and the gods have kind of abandoned the legacy, so but they also still play a part. There are like animal companions, there are all types of like mages, and there are the technological advancements. And we follow Tessa and her relationship with the father as well, because the father controls the son, and they have this really negative relationship, and he's very cruel to them. And this is so good. So if you like if you like really tension filled, angst filled fantasy romance, this is the one for you. And if you like really intricate world building, and if you like gods and how gods play in the lives of mortals, and like prophecy and oracles and seers and fate, if you like that in your fantasy, this is the one for you. And this one has about 4,000 ratings. The second book of this series came out last month, and the third book is coming out in, I want to say, October. So that's the one for that. Next up, we have The Crown of Oaths and Curses by J. Bree, the first book in the Mortal Fate series. This one is the only book in this series, but there are 2 novellas, The Sword and the Scepter, that come before this, that I recommended that you read prior to reading this. I did read them prior to, and I do think it enhance our reading experience. This is like, let's see, over 600 pages, and I read this in one sitting. I stayed up to like 5 in the morning reading this one. So this one I would say is for the girls that this is slow burn. This is the slowest burn. This is really enemies to lovers, because they're only enemies in this book. We haven't gotten to the lovers in the first book in this series, so prepare yourself for that, because it's going to be frustrating, and you're going to be mad about how they're not together and how horribly he is to her, all that stuff. So just prepare yourself for that. So if you like war focused book and wars between these but these groups of people and these races, so this war between the witches and the fae. This is another one with fae. Our love interest is the prince of the fae, and our main character is a witch, and she is also a warrior, and this has to do with like prophecies as well, and fated mates. So if you like fated mates, this one is fated mates as well. This one would be for the girls that like intricate world building, detailed descriptions of the things that are going on. A really thorough picture of the world is being created, and because there is no romance in this book, it gives a lot of extra time and space to building out the world and building out the conflict, because there are so many conflicts, and like our characters are very long lived. Like our main character, she's like 200 and something, and our love interest is like over 1,000 years old, I think. So they have a lot of history in just their lives and with their people, and they have these roles. They're very important people in the world, and like how these fates and things are goblins, all types of things. So this one, we follow our main character Rook, who in the novellas, you know, her family is slaughtered, and she is like on a mission to do something, and so she comes back and finds that her people are gone, and she thinks that it's the fae, because the fae have been trying to exterminate the witches, and prior to this, the witches are believed to be responsible for killing the king and queen of the Fae, who are Soren's parents, and he cannot come into his full power and rule the Fae until he has his mate. And Soren and Rook are mates, and they are able to like speak to one another through their minds. And then, but he hates the witches, and she finds out some things about who her mate is, and so she leaves and goes to another country and fights in this war that is happening. And years later, she's like, I gotta come back to my mate, and they come back, and he treats her like dust on the bottom of his shoe, like the scum of the earth. He calls her it. And we follow them as they are in the midst of this plot, but there's been a curse put on the Fae that they really cannot have children, and so the Fae numbers are dying out because they're fighting a war, but they're not repopulating, and that's happening. And also they're trying to solve the mystery of who killed Rook's family and who is trying to exterminate the witches, because the Fae are saying it's not us, like we're fighting in this war, yes, we're not going to witch covens and like destroying everything. And there's a lot more to it than that, but I don't want to give too much away. This one has about 7,000 ratings. I really enjoyed this one, but I just want you to know that you're gonna be frustrated reading this because there is no romance. So that's really for the fantasy girls, because the romance is non-existent. Like there is none at all. Not a hug, not a kiss, not nothing. So just be prepared. Next one is one that is so underrated, and I think if it was repackaged in like a traditional trade paperback and had a different cover, I think this would be the girls' favorite. Okay, like they don't know how much they're missing out, and that is A Heart of Blood and Ashes by Mila Vane, the first book in the Gathering of Dragons series. So in this one, we're following our main character, Maddox, who is the heir apparent to the Parsathi. And the Parsathian people are like this alliance of people who eons ago were divided in that war, and then this entity they call the Destroyer came, and they had to unite to fight against it. They defeated it kinda, and so it's gone away, but the specter of it is looming over the heads. And something happens at the beginning of the story where Maddox's parents, the king and queen of this alliance of these united people, were murdered. And Maddox finds out that the prince that this other person in their alliance killed his parents. Because of the alliance, he cannot kill them because he's made it look as if it was an innocent group of deaths, but he knows that that isn't what happened. And so he vows his revenge, and he finds out that the princess and the daughter of this man is the one who lured his mom out to be killed. And so he vows that even if it costs him his crown, he is going to get his vengeance on her. And so he finds her, and she's really frail, and like she's supposed to be like this from this long line of warrior queens, but she's not that. But in a surprising turn of events, she proposes that they get married and they get their vengeance together. And this is so good. Like the action is so good, the relationship between Maddox and Yvonne is so interesting. It's so tension filled because he has all this rage and this hate, and he thinks that she is a target of that, and she is like, I am partially guilty, but I am not the ultimate reason why these things happen. And this is a complicated like dynamic between these different political factions as well that's happening, and the relationship between them, the declarations, it's not groveling, but the lengths that Maddox goes through for his women, woo! This is so good. This is another one where I think each installment in this series follows a different couple, so you do get like a happily ever after, all that contained in this book. And I know it doesn't look like a typical fantasy romance book, but it is, and it's great. I just really want somebody to do like special editions of it. This is traditionally published. This is from Berkeley. This one has about 8,000 ratings. I want somebody to do special editions of it. I want them to get a recover, because so many people would love this if they would just pick it up, but it doesn't look like fantasy romance of today. And I think this also came out in 2020, so it kind of got lost in the pandemic shuffle, because I want to say it came out in like March 2020, right when things were getting started. So February 2020. So like it hasn't found its audience. Like, not that 8,000 is nothing, but I really think so many people would love this. This is so good. Like, I rated this 4 stars, and that's the highest rating I gave out last year. Really, I love this, and highly recommend it if you like action, if you like political intrigue, if you like royals and like the machinations that go on between those peoples, if you like this god element where there are these higher beings and higher powers that are interfering within the lives of these people. Highly recommend this one. The next one I want to talk about is a bit unlike the others, although I do think it's fantasy romance. I don't know that all the marketing surrounding this book pitches it as such, and that is A Taste of Golden Iron by Alexandra Rowland. This is a standalone, so this is a one and done. This is an Achillean romance, so that it's male. This is also traditionally published from Tor, and in this one we follow our main character, Prince Kadu, and he, you know, has a situation that happens. He is the brother to, I want to say, what is she called? Is she the Sultan? His sister is the leader of their world. Okay, this one, the magic is very low. Like, it's very low magic. This is, I want to say, inspired by Turkish culture. I'm told that it's not really a great representation of that, but I wouldn't know myself, but I just want to share that with you. And we follow our main character, Prince Kadu, who gets into a bit of a situation with his sister's, the father of his sister's baby, basically. But in this world, everything is like through the maternal line, and so as the father of the baby, he doesn't really have any rights or any claim to the baby unless the mom gives them to him. And so he is trying to maneuver to get in the best position possible because he's like a foreigner. And Kadu gets in a situation, and he and this baby daddy basically are kind of at odds, and he makes trouble for his sister, which is the leader of this country. And in this world, there are metals, people in the royal family and whatever, they can taste metals, and they can taste like the purity and like the composition of the metals, and that's why this country's money is so well regarded. It's kind of like the franca in this world, because they know that because they can test it and they can taste it, they know that it's pure, so that it has a lot of bearing in the world. And this comes under attack, and so Kadu is like assigned to kind of solve this mystery of what's going on. And while that's happening, he is assigned a new bodyguard. So this is the prince and his bodyguard trope, or just the bodyguard trope, I think, because it's usually with women. And he's assigned this bodyguard called Evermere, and Evermere is extremely straight-laced, and he does not like Prince Kadu. He thinks he's a spoiled brat, and he is just very sick of his shit, and he's very reluctant to deal with him. And while all this is happening, Prince Kadu has had like this thing going on with one of his like armsmen, one of his guards. His name is Tadak, but he kind of is like, you know what, it's a wrap. Our little fling is over. And Tadak is like, I don't want it to be, and he's still flirting with him and like has interaction. And Evermere is just like fighting his attraction to him because he finds him so insufferable. And like the way this talks about like devotion and duty and like this sense of loyalty and just it's the economy of language, and the way it's written is just so beautiful. Like, it has very beautiful sentence structure. I really enjoyed this one. So this one would be for the girlies that a lot of these are given political intrigue, and I think a lot of us have political intrigue, but this one I would say if you like court politics, and court dynamics specifically, because there's so much of that in here, and you like while there isn't a lot of magic, there is like this sense of this world being really well developed and really rich and really filled with like culture, and like this is a world that exists outside of this book. And I feel like she could and she should write another book in this world, but that's neither here nor there. Really enjoyed this one. I want to say this one has around 9,000 ratings. Next up, we have Blood and Steel by Helen Shrewer. I also would say this is for the classic fantasy girl. Like, it reminds me of a classic fantasy, the way that it's written. This is the first book in the Legends of Fesmar series. 3 books are out in this world, and there's also a prequel novel that is out as well. I want to say the 4th and final book in this series is coming out later this year, so now is the perfect time to pick it up. In this one, we follow our main character, Thea, and she is an orphan, and in this world, you know, orphans are raised by these like communities, and her sister were both like sent to this like community to live. And in this world, there was this prophecy many years ago that the destroyer of the world would come bearing a blade in one hand and darkness in the other. And the governments of this world took that to mean that a woman was going to destroy the world, and so if they bar women from taking up arms, they would prevent the destruction of their world. And our main character is 23, and she was told by an oracle and by the fates that she would die when she was 27, and so she only has 4 years left to live, and she's very determined to make the most of that and make this like legend of herself. She wants to become the first female war sword, and in the military of this world, the war swords are the protectors of the entire realm, not just this country but all of these countries that are in alliance, because there is this like breaking of the atmosphere, and these creatures from like the ether or wherever are coming in and attacking, and the war swords are the only people that can fight it off. And there hasn't ever been a female war sword, and as of right now, because of the things that have changed in this world and like the wars and things that have happened, there are only 3 war swords left, and Thea is determined to become the next one. And our main character is the youngest war sword ever. His name is Wilder Hawthorne, and he kind of becomes Thea's he kind of becomes the person that's training her, because she is petitioning so that she can be allowed to fight. And so for the last 6 years, she's been fighting on her own and like training herself, and she is caught and has been taken a task, and she petitions so that she can become a war sword. And so she is allowed to do so, and this is her story of training. So if you love a training sequence, if you like a training montage and like a kind of like a school setting, this one is the best one for that. And this one is it's like forbidden romance, because he is training her, and then there's also this like angstiness, because like a lot of will they, won't they. This has the one horse trope. This has who did this to you, all that. The way it's written gave me really big classic fantasy vibes, but it's still very modern, but it just gave me that like feeling that I got when I read classic fantasy. And I really like the world building in here. Thesmar and like the war swords. I will say the word war sword specifically is overused in this series. I think I checked on my Kindle and it was used 300 times, which I think is fucking insane. But overall, I still really like this, and I really like the romance in this one as well. Obviously, I really like the romance in all of these. I'm not really talking about that because I'm telling you that I'm recommending this to you based on like the fantasy elements of it, but I do enjoy the romance in all of these. These are faves of mine. And I really enjoyed this one. I read the sequel. I didn't love the sequel quite as much, but I think I'm in that minority because everyone that I've seen that has read the sequel actually liked it more than book 1. But I am planning on reading book 3 soon, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. Next up, we have my most recent read, and that is the one that I finished yesterday, and that is A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. This is for the girlies who like mythology. This is based on Norse mythology, and like one of my favorite things about Danielle L. Jensen is how much world building she's able to put in so few pages. Like, this is not a long book. It's just over 400 pages, and the world and the gods and the magic and the lore, all these are, and the history is just so well developed in so few pages. So if you like really intricate world building, if you like Norse mythology or just mythology in general and how that impacts people in this world, I really recommend this one. This one, we follow our main character Freya and our love interest Bjorn. And Freya, but it's only from Freya's POV. Bjorn is a love interest, and we follow Freya in the beginning of the story as she is in this loveless marriage to this guy who is touched by the gods, and he is touched by the god of like the sea, and so he has control over sea creatures, and because of that he gets away with murder in their village. Until one day the Jarl of their area comes with his son, and her husband Bragi has like petitioned to no longer be married to her, and so she's ordered to fight to the death with the Jarl's son, who is also god touched. He's god touched by the god Tyr, who I think is like war and fire, and he has this like blade, this axe made of fire that's like impenetrable, and not impenetrable, but it's like indestructible. And when she does this, it is revealed that she is also god touched, and she is the like heralded shield maiden, and she's able to like extend her powers to protect and repel any type of magical attacks. And this Jarl was given this prophecy that the person who controls the shield maiden will become the king of all the land and things like that, and he wants that, so he decides to make her his second wife, and he's gonna use her to take over their land. And there's this like forbidden element to the romance between her and Bjorn because she's married to his father, but his father thinks that it is Bjorn's destiny to protect the shield maiden, so they have like a lot of scenes with close proximity to one another, and there's really good banter. Like, I really like Bjorn. He's like a very fun guy. He doesn't take life too seriously, and I really enjoyed that. Okay, my apologies, my memory card was full. So anyway, we're following them as they are going on this journey where Freya has to do these trials, and and various things are happening to them on this journey, because once all the other jarls and leaders in this world hear about Freya and the prophecy and her abilities, they are determined that they are going to be the ones to control her fate. And Bjorn is constantly just like, listen girl, you can control your own fate, because people who are touched by the gods are unfated, and the name of this series is the Saga of the Unfated, and they have the ability to make their own fate and change the fates of those around them. So I really enjoyed this one, and I'm a big fan of Danielle L. Jensen's. I found Freya to be kind of frustrating, and her motivations really bothered me, but overall I think this is such a well developed story, and I definitely will be continuing on with the sequel. This one has about 11,000 ratings, so definitely pick that one up. And if you can pick it up soon, do so, because then you can get the one with the pretty blue sparkly spray edges. And then recommendation number 9, the one with the highest readership of all of these, and that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadman. This one has like 235,000 reviews. So most of y'all probably know about this and have read it. So I won't spend too much time talking about this one, but this is another vampire fantasy, and this one also has a trial component. So we follow our main character, who is the adopted human daughter of the vampire king, and in an effort to protect her, he has trained her up as a warrior, but even still, she is still human and still vulnerable to the vampires of this world. So they hatch a plan that she is going to enter the Kajari, and the winner of the Kajari, which is a competition that happens once every 100 years in honor of the goddess Nyasia, the winner is able to ask her for a boon, and they want to ask that she essentially be made into a vampire, but that she also can share in Vincent's power, and like no one can come between them or harm her in any way. And so she enters into this competition, and we meet our love interest Rain, and we have some moments where they're trying to kill each other, which is so sexy, honestly. And they have a lot of banter, and they have to form this like unlikely alliance, because there are certain trials in this competition where it's important that you have allies and people to work with, and so they reluctantly decide to work with one another. And there's a lot of will they won't they, there's a lot of tension. I think the world building and the lore behind these different vampire houses is extremely well done, and I really enjoy how this was done. The romance, I really was invested. It was a lot of tension, it was a lot of angst, and I just love banter. I love a good banter, like even in my real life, like if we don't have a good banter, like what are we doing, what are we talking about, like for what? And I really enjoy Araya and Rain in this one. I have read the novella and the sequel to this, and this is a series of connected duologies. So the first 2 books are out in this world. There's also like a standalone novel and a novella between these, and hopefully the next book in this series will come out later on this year. This has now been picked up and traditionally published by Tor, so you can very easily access that one at Barnes, at your local bookstore, online, all that. And then last but not least, those were 9 books that I read that I think are great fantasy romances for people who are fans of epic fantasy, high fantasy. But I was like, 9, I don't like that number. So I was like, let me just pick one more book, but I didn't have one more. So instead of recommending you a book that I've read, I'm recommending you a book that's on my TBR. So I have not read it, so take this with a grain of salt, but everything that I've heard about it leads me to believe that it fits the parameters that it will be good for girlies who like epic fantasy and girlies who like fantasy romance. And this is coming off the recommendation of people that I follow and I trust, and that is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I'm planning on reading this very, very soon, so probably in a wrap up soon to come, or in a vlog, you'll get my thoughts on this and whether or not I can truly give this my stamp of approval. But from what I've heard about it, it does meet the qualifications of being like an epic fantasy romance. In this one, like, first of all, let's get into the cover. Like, what cover designer? They did the damn thing. Cover by AT Cover Design. So go ahead, AT, or at Cover Designs. I don't know. It literally says AT, but I don't know if that's an initial or whatever. It has this really nice map here, like just very well constructed. So I'm gonna read you a synopsis of this one because I haven't read it, so I don't know too much about it. It says the creators did not expect their beloved dragons to sail skyward upon their end, to curl into balls just beyond the gravity's grip, littering the sky with tombstones, with moons. They certainly did not expect them to fall. As a valued elding blade of the rebellion group Fjord de Ots Reeves' job is to kill, to complete orders and never get caught. When a renowned bounty hunter is employed by the Crown to capture a member of the AF, Reeves' world is turned upside down. Blood spills, hearts break, and Reeve finds herself at the mercy of the Guild of Nobles, a group of dual-beaded elementals who intend to turn her into a political statement. Only death will set her free. Crushed beneath a morning weight, Khan Vager took the head of a king and donned his melted crown. Now on a tireless quest to assuage the never-ebbing ache in his chest, his hunt for a moon shard lures him into the belly of Gore's notorious prison, where he stumbles upon something that rips apart his perception of reality. A shackled miracle with eyes full of rage and blood on her hands. The echo of the past sings louder than the creators themselves, and even Reeve can't ignore the truth blaring at her from a warmer, happier time. There's more to this song than meets the eye, and some truths, they're too poisonous to swallow. When the Moon Hatched is a fast-paced fantasy romance for fans of witty banter and strong, sassy protagonists. Yeah, for love that blazes through the ages. I'm really excited about this one. Stunning cover. So excited to get into this and like confirm for myself whether or not this is that girly and if the girlies are correct. It has like all this information in the beginning about the world. It has like a glossary and the ages and the time explained. It has like a character list, and all of that is a sign of a good fantasy book to me, because it's like you got so much that I need to give you a little primer, a little bit of information. It has information on like the creatures and the beings of the world, and it's so good. It has a pronunciation guide, like. Anyway, so here are 10 fantasy romance books to put on your TBR if you are a fan of epic fantasy. If you made it to the end of the video, let's leave a moon or an egg for when the moon hatched, and I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.